Just in the interest of time, I'm going to just give a very truncated introduction to our next speaker, Sandra John. Sandra Solomon's a pseudonym. You'll understand why she uses a pseudonym in a moment. Sandra was born in Ramallah in the West Bank, spent most of her life raised in Saudi Arabia. Her uncle was one of the founders of Fatah, a terrorist group that has claimed the lives of many hundreds of Israelis through suicide bombings, stabbings, and other murders. Sandra, as you can imagine, has taken a very bold, very brave position against Islamic fundamentalism and against irrational hatred of Israel. I mean, I could go on here forever just about the incredible bravery. I think even just before we begin, let's please just give Sandra a round of applause just for her. This is the very first time she has ever spoken publicly about this, so this is an incredible moment, I think, for us, and we're honored that you would choose this as the first venue. So, without further ado, Sandra.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm so honored to be with you here tonight to stand up for the truth. Before I start, I'm standing here, first of all, to honor all the Israeli victims from the Palestinian terrorist attack that's happening since what's so-called the 9th Intifada. And I want to say sorry for everyone who lost their beloved one, and my prayers with the one who got injured and wounded. May the Lord heal them and bless them.
Thank you.
It's a lot of things that I want to share with you tonight, but I'm going to I tried my best to wrap it up. I will start with my story. My name is Sandra Solomon. I was born in Ramallah. We're originally from Jaffa. After my birth, my mom and my dad got divorced, so we ended up leaving to Jordan to stay with my grandmother, who was left the 1948 when the conflict started. She was one of the refugees. She moved to Jordan. What I want to share with you tonight, it's my childhood, how I grew up in a Muslim world, as a Palestinian as well, my story, and how I become pro-Israeli and pro-Jewish. The first seed that gone into my heart for hatred for the Jewish people is from home. The story that my grandma told me, that the Jewish people occupied our land and they kicked her out. My dad was 2 years, she ended up going to Jordan. I grew up with my grandma. She's the one who raised me. She was like a mother to me. And she would always tell me that we are the victim of the occupying. You know, they occupy our land and we have to fight them. And every time she would just finish her prayer with a dua or saying, oh, may Allah curse the Jewish, curse Israel. I grew up with cursing the Jews almost every day, in a house that we curse Jews almost every day. And we will just always wishing them that they're gonna be destroyed. Move on to Saudi Arabia. I was 9 years old when I moved to Saudi Arabia. My dad got remarried and we ended up going to Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, the teaching, the fundamental teaching of Islam, it's very intensive teaching. You know, in the school, we learn the Quran, full of it. We learn the Hadith, the life of Muhammad, the founder of Islam, the Islamic history, and everything. And we used to recite the Quran. We used to recite, you know, all the verses. We memorize all the verses from the Quran and what Muhammad said about the Jewish people and what the Quran say about the Jewish people. And later on, it's full of verses that promote anti-Semitism, promote hatred to the Jews in the Quran and the Hadith and the Islamic historical books. That's what we learned in the school, that the Jews are, like based off the Quranic teaching, and the books that explanations of the Quran, which is the tafsir. You can go on with the Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, go on with all Islamic scholars who interpret the Quran, who translate the Quran. That the Jews are filthy, Allah cursed them from the very first of the page of the Quran, that they are al-maghdub alayhim, mean Allah angry at the Jewish people. So they take it from the first, when we are 6 years old, and the first when we learn how to read and to write. Surah Al-Fatiha. This is from the very first page of the Quran. So the list goes on. So why he's angry at them? Because they broke the Sabbath, and they changed the word of God, they corrupted the word of God, they're never listening to Allah, they're never submitting to Him, and so the story goes on. And the hadith as well, that what Muhammad said or did with the Jewish people where they used to live in Medina. That's when he made hijrah or immigration to Medina. And the historical books as well, that talks about the Islamic history and how great Islam and how the conquest and took all the land of infidels, and we have to make a da'wah, we have to make Islam the upper and the supreme power, and we have to conquer all these lands and kick out all the Jewish and infidels, and the list goes on with the Christian and anyone who's not submitting to Islam. That's what I've been taught in school. It's not something I'm making it up. And also, the source of the hatred, the love of Hitler. We used to praise Hitler, and the Holocaust. They used to teach us that Hitler did one mistake. He left some Jews. He should have wiped them all off. For me, it was all like, as a young, child doesn't know anything. You just, whatever you're putting in kids' head, whatever you teach them in the school, whatever you tell them in home, in the street, in masjid, in the mosque. And especially the mosque, I remember very well every Friday prayer. After the Friday prayer, the dua, meaning the wishing, they pray. They worship Allah and they say, may Allah curse the Jews, may Allah destroy Israel, and we cannot love them, they are infidels. And another thing that promotes or insert the hatred in our in our heart and mind for the Jewish people is the Arabic media. This is very important because in mainstream media in Middle East, and from all the way Morocco to Libya, Algeria, Egypt, Sudan, go on to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and go on. In Arabic media, they promote the anti-Semitism or the anti-Jewish either songs. We used to, recite, I remember very well, Al-Arab Ahbabna, wal-Yahud mean, like the Arab, it's our beloved, and the Jewish are our dogs, and we are the Mujahideen, and we have to fight it. So poetry, poems, since we're kids, we used to recite poems that, I have to be fida'i, I have to be mujahid, I have to fight for my rights, I have to fight for my land, and all that stuff, and they bring the Jewish people. In the series, in Ramadan, we used to watch, I remember very well, there was a series that brings the Jewish people in. The image that we got about Jews, that they're thirsty for the kids' blood and they want to mix it with the cookies. So that's the image what we got. The house, the mosque, the streets, the school, everywhere. That's where I was raised in Saudi Arabia. And another thing, for them, it's the holy of the holy places. It's the Aqsa Mosque. And because the Jews are filthy, they're not supposed to enter the Aqsa Mosque. That's why many Muslims, they're shouting and yelling, Allahu Akbar, when any Jews try to get in or even walk beside it. To them, it's the holy of holies. So because they're filthy, they cannot be in a holy place like the mosque. Another thing, that the Muslims think that the Jews are always conspiring against them. There's always like, never blame it, never admit their fault. Even like now, till today, many Muslims, they say, oh, ISIS is just a Jews. They created this because they're, want to destroy Islam or bring a bad image about Islam or any other, terrorist organization. They never admit their mistake. We always used to blame the Jews for everything and anything. That's how I grew up with it. They're evil, and we have to destroy them. As what Robert said, my uncle, his name is Sakhr Habash. He served as Fatah General Deputy of Intellectual Affairs, presented by Yasser Arafat. He was with him all the time. So I grew up in a house where they used to tell me, I used to see him in the news, he visited us a couple times. Your uncle, he's a fighter, he's at the front line. We should be against the Jews and against Israel. As a Palestinian, you have to stand up for your right, you have to stand up for your land. We have to be all fighter as a Palestinian and as a Muslim. You have no other way. You have to follow this path. That's Allah and Muhammad, he put it for you. So what's the solution now? What can we do? There's one way. There's no other way. Forget about dialogue about two states, and forget about peacemaking, and forget about Oslo, and forget about everything. The only one way is through a holy war called jihad. And if you do jihad against Israel and wipe out the Jewish people, you're a winner in two ways. If you kill them, you got the land, you win. If you kill them and you die as a martyr, as a shaheed for Allah. And you get the virgins for the men. I don't know, the woman got nothing.
72.
So that's basically, when you grow up, imagine, put yourself in my shoes. I grew up with this in home, in school, in the streets. I remember very well in the first Intifada, when the first Intifada happened. The time where my grandma, she would cry out. And I loved my grandma. I wished at that time, at a certain point of my time, when I was teenage, I really wished I want to go out to fight the Jewish people. I want to be with this, fighters and fight for the mosque. And not just the mosque, like my grandma, she was crying so much because she used to live at that time when the conflict started in 1948. And this is a true story, that she's been kicked out. And my dad was only 2 years, and she had 8-acre yard, big land. She was farmer. She had the Jaffa orange, Jaffa, famous in orange, and she used to cry it. And my grandma, to me, she was like my mother. I wanted to revenge for her. I will do whatever it takes me. But the years go by. So that's why they teach us, based on all these things that have been learned in the Islamic world. And I learned the Quran very well. I was very good at it. I used to memorize almost half of it. And in Saudi Arabia, the teaching is very concentrated in the Quran, in the Islamic teaching, very concentrated. I would say it's not like the same like other country around. So when I learned it, I learned it inside out. So that's put us again back to the same point. What we gonna do then? So what we should do with this, the enemy of Allah, the enemy of us, they took the land, they destroy us, they're filthy, they're evil. So what we should do? We cannot, there's no compromising. There is only one way, the jihad. To go war against them, as I said, you're winning both ways. And because in Islam they teach, if you die as a martyr for Allah, you're not gonna die. You're gonna live. And this is the only one way for salvation in Islam. Ask any Muslim in the whole world. If you ask him, are you guaranteed to go to heaven? It's gonna be, I don't know, inshallah, maybe, God, Allah willing. But what's the very straight path to heaven is to die as a martyr for Allah and gain the salvation. For more information about more detail, there's many things I can share with you about why Islam hates Jews. To fix the problem, we need to fix it from the root. You cannot fix, if you have a bad tree and giving you a bad fruits, you're not gonna pull out the bad fruits. The tree is still producing. The main core, the main problem is Islam itself. And that's why I want to invite you on April 11 at 7:30 at the Zionist Center. I'm going to speak in more detail why Islam hates Jews. You're more than welcome to come. It's a free event.
Can you repeat that venue again?
It's on April 11 in the Zionist Center on Marley Avenue, 788 Marley Avenue at 7:30. It's more in detail about the teaching of the Quran and the Hadith and the life of Muhammad and what he did with the Jewish people. The question now, so after I grew up with all this, and all this information and all this data got into my mind, my spirit, my thoughts, the hatred, the amount of hatred toward Jewish people and toward Israel. We used to recite, we used to be happy if I see in the news someone did a suicide bombing, oh Allahu Akbar, we will make any candy cookies and invite neighbors. We are happy for this, especially when it comes to the young generation, the young kids. As I grow up, as I said, I grew up with this. Did I make it? No, they teach me, all this. So we have to put lots of effort to, and one thing, the history. In Islamic world, they don't teach the Roman history, they don't teach other history. There is no, only with the conquest, the khilafat, all the khilafat and all the, one and after another. There was no connection to the Jew. We always thought Palestine, it's Arabic Muslim land. It will never be a Jewish land, ever. Solomon was Muslim, everyone was Muslim. So technically, what they grow up with, it needs to be addressed, of course, from the Bible, number one. Number two, aside of the Bible, there's a lot of evidence, the historian. They need to know the history, the textbook that's been, it has to be in every language, especially Arabic language. There's also another problem, in Middle East, some books are not allowed, they're watch. Everything is watch. So there's lots of effort to put in. We can start here in Canada, since it's a free country, we can start here to bring this message out more and explain the connection for Jewish people to the land.